My mother really enjoys embroidering. And one of the things that she embroidered was a challah cover for Adiv and I as a wedding present. For those of you that don't know, there are rituals on Friday night at the table, and one of the things you do is you cover challah, you cover bread. And what she wanted to depict on the challah cover were the flames of the Shabbat candles. But she couldn't find a thread that she felt showed that shimmering light that candles have. So she decided to create her own, and she took embroidery floss, which looks like one string, but actually most embroidery floss is 6 or 8 strands twisted together. So she took some orange and she took some yellow, and she very meticulously pulled off threads and then retwisted the orange and yellow together so that it would have a shimmering effect. And it's absolutely beautiful. In this week's Parsha, there is a theme running through it about thread. We have, of course, the story of the tzitzit. Then we get a story of braiding. We have the commandment around the challah. And finally, in your Haftarah that you read so beautifully, we talk about Rahab, who sheltered Joshua's spies when they came to check out Jericho. And she put a red thread hanging down her window so that when the Israelites came back to attack Jericho, they would leave Rahab and her family in safety. What exactly is this mitzvah of tzitzit? Well, it actually is mentioned twice in the Torah, and it uses different words each time. So in our Torah portion, it talks about patil, which is a single thread. But later in the book of Deuteronomy, it's described as gedelim, which means something that's twisted together or woven or braided. So which is it? How can it be both a single thread and something that's twisted together? And if you look at how it ended up on our prayer shawls, it's a combination of the two, right? The top of it is knotted together, it's gedelim, and the bottom we have the patilim, the individual strands. And I see in this a metaphor for any time when you're involved in a community, but you're also a single entity. It could be that sometimes as a family member, there are times when you're gedelim, when you're twisted and woven together, and other times when you're a patil, a single thread. That could apply to your synagogue or church community. But today, the lens I want to explore with you is, what does it mean to be a Jewish American? Because sometimes we're gedelim, we're woven into the larger culture around us. And sometimes we're patil, we're individual threads. We have a unique Jewish flavor. So a good example would be Thanksgiving. Most Jewish families I know celebrate Thanksgiving like every other American family. But some Jewish families stuff their turkey with challah bread, with that unique flavored bread that we eat on Friday night. So they give it a Jewish twist. Even the tzitzits themselves, we've come to think of them as a unique Jewish garment. But actually, archaeologists tell us that at the time these blessings and commandments were written, everyone wore fringes on their garment. That was the fashion in Canaan. So much so that when you were signing a letter, they found clay tablets where people have pressed their fringes into the wet clay as a signature. But what's interesting about the custom of the Jews is they decided they needed a patil techelet, a thread of blue, as the Jewish way of saying, we wear tzitzit just like our Canaanite neighbors, but we do it in a special way. We've chosen a color that reminds us of the clothing of the priesthood. Techelet was one of the colors that the priests wore in their holy garments in the sanctuary. Now, I believe that Jews are good at finding ordinary things and sanctifying them. Everybody eats. Jews do a blessing before and afterwards. Everybody goes to sleep. Jews often say the Shema before going to sleep. And when it comes to challah, for example, making bread, we separate out a small portion for God. In fact, when you go and buy kosher bread in the store, one of the reasons it's considered kosher is that the baker has taken aside a portion of the dough as a gift for God, and a reminder to us that everything is a gift from God. We take nothing for granted. That being said, I've never been able to adhere to following a mitzvah just because God told me to. I always need to find some meaning in it. And I'd like to do that with you today by looking at 2 passages in the red books. So if you'd like to follow along with me, We're on page 854. And we're also going to read a little piece of the Haftorah that talks about Rahab's red thread. And your job while we're looking at this is to see what is spiritual about these threads. What do these stories have in common? What can a thread accomplish on a spiritual level? At the very bottom of 854, the Lord said to Moses as follows, "Speak to the Israelite people and instruct them to make for themselves fringes on the corners of their garments throughout the ages. Let them attach a cord of blue to the fringe at each corner. That shall be your fringe." Now here's the important part. Look at it, recall all the commandments of the Lord, and observe them, so that you do not follow your heart and eyes in your lustful urge. Thus you shall be reminded to observe all my commandments and be holy to your God. Now, if we look at the Rahab story, she has given shelter to the spies from the Israelites, and she's explained that she believes in the God of the Israelites, that this is a mighty God, and she says, "I want to be loyal." So if you go to page 858, verse 17, she's helping the men climb back out through the window to safety, but the men warned her, "We will be released from this oath which you have made us take when we invade the country. So you tie this length of crimson cord to the window through which you let us down. Bring your father, your mother, your brothers, and all your family together in your house. And if anyone ventures outside the doors of your house, his blood will be on his own head, and we shall be clear. But if a hand is laid on anyone who remains in the house with you, his blood shall be on our heads." So what are I'm asking you, now is your turn to participate. What are the themes you see between the two stories woven through? What is the point of thread? What is it supposed to do for us? Yes, you have to take an action of some kind. If you're making your own talit, it doesn't come with this part attached. You can go to the store and you can buy it, and it's just an individual package of threads. You have to be the one to tie it. You have to take action. And once you've tied on your tzitzit, you have to be the one to use it on a somewhat regular basis. And the same with Rahab, right? They said, "Look, there's going to be a war, lady, and we're going to do our best to protect you, but you have to take action too. You have to tie a thread from your window so our soldiers know which home to leave alone." What else did you notice that the threads are supposed to accomplish? Earl.
In each case, the thread reminds you of an agreement, a covenant.
The thread reminds you of an agreement or a covenant. So in the case of the tzitzit, it's to remind us of all the commandments God gave us. And in the case of Rahab's thread, she protected the spies, and now the spies will protect her. I think there's one more theme. Does anyone want to add to the conversation?
It's a color that you have to look upon to remember it. To remember what you're supposed to remember. So
Yes.
using your eyes. It's a sense. It's using your senses, using your eyes.
Yes, it brings about memory, and when you look at that color, it's supposed to remind you of something. I think it also is an image of protection. The Psalms that we recite before we put on the talit, it's all this visual, it's this imagery about the Shekhinah spreading her wings around us and holding us close. And I know some of us have memories of sitting next to our parents or our grandparents in the synagogue, and they take their talit and they put it around you too. There's a sense of protection when you put it on. And clearly for Rahab, there was this sense that her home would be protected in the upcoming war. So in conclusion, there are many families that have embroidered heirlooms in their home. And I think when we look at these heirlooms, they bring back memories and important values and stories that our family have told us. And the thing about my particular embroidered heirloom is that not only do I feel like gedelim, something that's woven into the fabric of society like many people we have an heirloom, but mine is a patil, an individual thread, because it happens to be a challah cover, something used in a Jewish ritual. So I think the blessing of this parsha is to teach us how to both be gedelim, woven into the society around us, and also patil, our own unique individual selves. Shabbat Shalom.